Hi, I'm Richard Rogers, and I absolutely hope that you enjoy today's spiritual message. You know, we at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center are committed to helping people live better lives. We're going to provide you tools over and over, spiritual tools that allow you to live your best possible life. And if you want to leave a donation to continue to allow the work that we do to support other people just like you, we say thank you. Thank you for your generosity, because this ministry is committed to making the world a better place.
Okay, so last week we began a 2-week series on your soul guidance. So how many of you feel like you can sense from time to time that you really are being guided? How many of you sometimes feel like you're not being guided when you need guidance the most? It's like, hello, where's the mojo? Who's in charge of directing me today? So last week we began looking at the macro level, the big picture. And the whole point about last week was that this is you. You're happy. I'm going to give you some hair, right? Some hair, not a lot of hair, some hair, right? So this is you. And then what I wanted you to really look at is, what is the direction of your dreams? Like that, I believe that all of us have a spiritual project, have a purpose, have the thing that we are being called into. And last week, I wanted you to really know what that was. I asked you to be in a time of prayer, to really become clear about what is your spiritual next project. What is your next spiritual project? And we spent some time on that, really looking at that. And last week I gave you 5 points. I just want to go over real quick, right? And the first one was that I wanted you to actually know what your spiritual project is. Now, the comment was, well, doesn't God know? If God knows, why do I need to know, right? And there is some truth to that, right? Because God knows where God's taking you. God only knows that God knows where God's taking you, right? But the whole work here is that we're supposed to become more conscious, right? And as we become more conscious of this, we can actually be more of a co-creator with God to go where we're being called to do. Yes, that we can just kind of fumble around, and oftentimes when we're fumbling around, it still works. How many of you have just ever fumbled into great success? It works, right? And so we always have that as a fallback position, right? The dumb luck, right? We just use it. But what I'm really inviting you is to the time when you're conscious, so that you can actually co-create with God. That it's not just God dragging you to the next level of good, but it's actually you intentionally moving in the direction of the good that God has for you. So that was one. That was to become conscious. The second one that I think is so fascinating, that I got a lot of comments about, was the idea that whatever your next level of good is, at a soul level, at a spiritual level, you're already connected to it. Does it? And there were a lot of questions about that. Because the idea here is that whatever good God has for you, it's already a part of you. You're already connected to it. That only in your perception can you feel disconnected from anything that God is. Only in your mind can you separate yourself from this and that. Because in the infinite goodness of God, everything is already there. It's already present. It's already fully manifest. So when we do our affirmations from the point of view, I am, we're not saying I will, right? Because an I will is future tense, and it's the idea that I'm going to become that, instead of the realization that I'm already that. And so when we really begin to lay hold of that I'm already that, then it changes the way we feel, because now we feel that connection. So whatever you desire most, when you move from a sense of going about creating it, right, into just establishing it, that it's already there, it's already made manifest in the spiritual dimension, and now we're uncovering it in the physical dimension, but we're already one, we're already it, it's already us. So I want you to really practice that. In those areas in your life where you're really wanting to experience more good, I want you to really become aware of that which I desire, I already am. That which I desire, I already have. That which I desire, I'm already one with. Because the moment you step out of kind of the binary thinking of this or that, or a sense of separation, and you move into oneness conscious, the more you begin to create and really live the life that you desire most. So that was point number 2. Point number 3 is, even though we are one with that, we still have to take physical steps toward the manifestation of our desire. That even Jesus took physical steps to manifest his desire. That when you go every day and do the thing that you're called to do that day, that is an act of faith that you are manifesting this, that you actually believe in this, that you're making effort, that you're working toward that, is the realization of that. But it does require effort. It does require action on our part. Now, well, I can go, that's enough. Because I got to get on to tonight, all right? 4 is that the more we ask for help, the more the universe can help us. The more we become teachable, the more the universe can step in and open doors for us. So the more that we ask for help from Spirit, from the people around us, from life, the more we open the door to more divine assistance. And the 5th one is the one that really is that your soul actually knows how to get there. That whatever the desire is, your soul knows exactly how to get there. And as we trust our inner guidance, that we can manifest that in greater and greater ways, in a quicker and quicker ways, because we actually know. Okay, so that takes us to tonight, okay? Because once you know what this is, that's the one big decision, right? Because that defines everything else. But then, once you know what this is, there's like a million little decisions to get there. So this is important. Because if you decide you want to go over here, right, it changes, right? So the direction that you pick actually creates that out of the infinite possibilities that you actually decide your future by what you pick. So the decision that you make in picking absolutely is first and foremost. But then there has to be about a million other little decisions that actually takes to support that one big decision. Now, let's look at what makes a choice difficult, right? So when you have a difficult choice to make, what is making it difficult? And I really believe that there are kind of 3 areas that I want to touch on tonight. The first one is the belief that we don't know what to do, right? How many of you ever spent any time in that belief that I don't know what to do, right? And because it makes so much sense, right? That I don't know what to do. So when we're in that, I did a talk several Sundays ago, where I talked about finding your way. And one of the things, one of the points I tried to make on that talk was the idea that there's an unbelievable amount of historic precedent in whatever decision you're about to make. That whatever decision you're about to make, that decision has probably been made before. And probably there's a level of historical perspective about that decision. And there's also not only historical perspective about that decision, but also the current best thinking. Like there's a current day probably thought about that decision. And what's interesting, when you have to make a decision, is to actually access what others are doing about that. But that in and of itself doesn't make it right, but it actually gives you a level of more information to really spark your intuition. Because everything comes back to your intuition. That when you know what other people have done historically with that decision, and you know what the current best thinking is, but then you take it into your own sense of intuition, that reveals what you need to be doing. So the first thing I want you to look at is every time we're not sure what to do, one of the truths that I want you to come back to is this underlying statement that my soul knows. Will you say that with me? My soul knows. That whatever it is, my soul knows. Because every decision, I want that decision to be empowering you that your soul always knows how to get to where you want to go. So let's say that one more time. My soul knows. Now, the next thing that makes choices difficult is the idea that there are too many variables. Like there's too many choices. There's too many ways this could go. There's just too many. And that's where I really want you to begin to listen to not only your soul knows, but that you're in a constant conversation with your soul. That you're listening to your soul every day on listening to what you need to do that day. Because I want your spiritual life to be very, very simple and elegant. And what it means to me to have a simple and elegant spiritual life is that you're listening to your soul every day and just doing the thing that day that's yours to do. Has anybody ever been anxious that you feel like you can't get it all done? Right? Now, if you're being anxious that you can't get it all done, is that a spiritual calling or is that an ego experience? It's an ego experience, right? It's a belief that there's too many variables, there's too many pieces, there's too many things to get done. I can't possibly get it done. So then I am profoundly messed up, right? Because I can't get it all done. So then sometimes we even go to the thing that says, so why even bother trying? Let's just give up. Let's go home. Let's pull up the covers over our head. Call it a night. That it's never going to get done. And I'm lost. Right? But what I want is a level of elegance where every day you're listening to what's being called to you to do that day. And you're just taking one step or two steps. That the idea that you're going to get it all done in one day is an ego fallacy, right? Because you're only going to take one step. Or you're going to take two steps, or maybe on a great day you take 3 steps. And it doesn't even look like you're moving, right? Because you just take 1 or 2 steps. But then what happens in a year, or 6 months, or a month, you look back and you think, holy moly, I've gone this far. But it never, in any of those days, it never looked like you were doing that much. You were just waking up every day, listening to the Spirit of God within you, and taking the step that you needed to take that day, and you were just building a life. Day in and day out, listening to God, you were building a life. And the key is not to get distracted by your own fears. Because when you get distracted by your own fears, you don't take the steps that you're supposed to take that day, right? And it's this simply elegant process of every day we're just taking 1 or 2 steps in the direction of our desire, being guided by God, not always seeing how this step, when it doesn't look consequential, is actually needed for the 10th step down the road that you're not going to make for a month from now. But if you don't take this step today, that piece is going to be missing when you get there a month from now. So over and over again, what I want you to begin to see is once you're clear about what Spirit's calling you into, then the next step is every day, what's the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you need to do to move everything forward, trusting that God sees it from a... Now, I'm going to say God sees it. Now, I don't believe that God is up there, right? But there is a higher level of consciousness, right, that we call higher. Now, could it be easily called deeper? Yes, right? So when I say higher consciousness, I don't want everybody to look to say, well, where is he? Where is he, right? Because I want you to really see it as a deeper. But there is a level of higher consciousness that if you take these 3 steps today and that's all you do, there is an awareness, there is a consciousness that knows that you're going to get there. And your faith is being built by you knowing that you're going to get there. that you know that you know that you know that you're going to get to where your heart desire is, that you're going to get there. In fact, you knowing it, not only believing it, but knowing it actually accelerates the process, okay? So with all the variables, with all the overwhelming number of variables, what I want you to see is all you have to do is listen to your soul and take the 1 or 2 steps today that are necessary. Now, let's talk about the third variable, or the third aspect of difficult choices. The third aspect of difficult choices is always fear. And the fear is rampant. It can be the fear that I'm not good enough to get to where I want, or that I can't get to what I want, or whatever it is. But there's always a fear along this process that calls us out. So I want you just to begin to pay attention to your fear and realize that God and your soul absolutely can overcome whatever your current fear is. And that your fear right now is actually the motivating factor to keep you moving, right? So that your fear is absolutely here to move you along. So if we go back to this belief that I'm already one with this. If you're telling yourself every day that I'm already one with this, are you going to have less fear or more fear? Less fear. If you tell yourself that you're already one with whatever your desire is, I want you just to see how much that minimizes your fear. If you keep looking at your goal as out there, then we can go astray. But if we see that our goal, whatever that we desire most, is already within us, it automatically minimizes our fear because it's already there. You know, and if we look at all the mythology, right, about the hero's journey, right? The hero always starts on his journey and always ends up where he or she started. And you think, well, how is that possible? If you go on a journey, why would you end up where you started? Like, if we look at the Wizard of Oz, where did Dorothy start? Where did Dorothy end up? Did she start and end in the same room that she started in? Because the hero or the heroine always starts and stops at the place where they began. Why? Because it was always within them. They didn't realize it was always within them. It looked like the project was outside of them, but it's always within them. Every hero's journey, every heroine's journey always begins and ends from the place that we start, because it has to. If you're one with God, everything that you desire is already within you. Would you like to say that with me? Everything that I desire is already within me. One more time. Everything that I desire is already within me. So if the heroine or the hero started a journey and they actually ended up in someplace else, it was like, well, it's not really within me, is it? That I really needed to go out there. No, there's always a circular aspect where they tend to go out there. It looks like they go back out there, but they can't realize it, that they've always had it, until they get home. I mean, that's Dorothy's whole scene. Remember, if you haven't seen Wizard of Oz, I don't want to be but at this point in your life, if you haven't seen the Wizard of Oz, it's like too late, right? You've seen it. Right? And the idea is she's laying on her bed, and then she said, oh, I had it all the time. Right? And that's always what happens. So the number one thing is I had it all the time. 2, I love this, right? When you're making a choice, you're not making a choice for the outcome, you're making a choice for the path. Okay? When you make a choice, you've already made the choice for the outcome. This is the outcome you're going toward, right? You've already made that choice. Every choice that you make after that choice is just the path. How many of you can see that you've ever made a choice that made your journey harder than it needed to be? Right? But were you making a choice for the outcome or for the path? No, you were making a choice for the path. The outcome was already established, but because of your sense of worth, because of your sense of knowledge, because of your experiences of the past, you made the choice either easier or harder, but you were just making a choice for the path, not for the outcome. The outcome was already sealed. You, at a soul level, you made the choice for the outcome the moment you started on the journey. Now, the journey can be crazy. It can be wonderful. It can be painful. It can be blissful. But every choice you make after the outcome choice is the path choice. And when we realize that we're just choosing the path, not the outcome, it takes all the pressure off the choice, because do I want to get there the easy way, or do I want to get there the hard way? How many of you have ever had a desire that you really didn't care if it was the easy way or the hard way, as long as you've got there? I have. I've had lots of those choices, where the thing in my life was so important to me that I would prefer the easy choice. I wanted the easy choice, but I really didn't care. All I wanted was the outcome. That was so important to me that I didn't care what kind of hell I had to walk through to get there, because that's what I wanted. But what I want you to see is that every difficult choice that you're looking at in your life, you've already made the outcome choice. And if you haven't made the outcome choice, that always needs to be the first choice. And then every choice after that is just the path. Do you want the easy path? You want the hard path? You want the path of grace, or do you want the path of hard work? Because over and over again, that's all you're ever being asked. Once you've made the outcome choice, over and over again, you're just deciding how much easier could it be? You know, Jesus could look up to the sky, look to the infinite possibilities of God, prayed about it, and boom, it happened. Now, most of us are not at that level of consciousness that we could turn water into wine, or we could tap somebody on the forehead and shout healed and have them get up, right? So most of us have a path that we need to walk to get to the outcome that we've desired, but all we're ever choosing is the path. The outcome our soul chose sometimes even before we got here. Okay, does that make sense? If it doesn't, God help us all, right? So the other thing that I want you to look at in difficult choices is I actually want you to try this on, right? And then make the decision from this point backwards. See, we get so used to looking at our life from this point toward our desire. I actually, because in consciousness you can go anywhere, because mind has no limit, you can actually go to the end result and ask yourself the question, if I was already here, how would I make that choice? If I was already a zillionaire, how would I make that choice? Right? If I was already in a deeply loving relationship, how would I make that choice? If I was already working at my dream job, how would I make that choice? And it's amazing to us that just flipping the question and looking at it from the backside instead of the front side changes literally everything, because we're so used to looking at our problems from our point of view that when we look at our problems from completion, from realization, they don't look so bad. Like if you're hiking up a mountain, when you're at the bottom, it looks like a long, long way. When you get to the top and you look back, you think, this is spectacular, right? Because once you change your point of view, the possibilities that you couldn't see from down there become available from up there. That I want you to begin to actually practice looking at your life from the highest point of view. From the idea that you've already accomplished that which you've desired. How many of you have ever read The Untethered Soul? Michael Singer? Michael Singer is fabulous. If you haven't read The Untethered Soul, it is one great book, right? Great book. One of the points in this book that I personally just loved was this idea of leaning back. And what he talks about is most of us are trained to lean forward. Like if there's a problem, if there's a challenge, if there's a moment, we have been taught, because we're problem solvers, we lean into it. What he talks about in this book, one of the sections in this book, is that we can actually learn to lean back. And when we learn to lean back, we can actually allow the fear to flow right on by and not engage it. So if we're making a difficult decision, what I want you to see is that there's a level of that decision that is beneath your fear. Like that you can actually get to a point where you can still feel the fear, but you haven't engaged in it. You're not living it. You notice it, you're aware of it, but it hasn't grabbed you, and you haven't grabbed it. You're just observing the fear as it floats by. And one of the things that happens when you're making a tough decision is when you're not engaged in the fear, it's much easier to let God be in charge. I did a meditation yesterday. Those are who get my meditations. I did a meditation where I asked the question, who's driving your bus? Right? And the idea is that I wanted you to begin to lean back over and over again and let the universe flow by and not engage in your fears. Just notice them. Watch them flow by as if they're going down a river, but you don't have to engage them. Now, most of us were taught that if we're going to be active, or if we're going to be productive, or if we're going to be kind of people get things done, we lean in and we get it done. But when it comes to your fears, I want you to really learn how to lean back. How many of you have ever leaned back and put your feet up? Now, would you say that's a statement of faith or fear? Faith. It's faith. When you lean back and put your feet up, are you assuming that life is going to work out? Well, it sure is in that moment. Like if your biggest thing you have to do in that moment is lean back and put your feet up, you're living the good life. I mean, that's how we define, that is every Corona commercial, right? Right? Not that I've ever seen those things, right? But that is every Corona commercial, right? Is that you lean back, put your feet up, and just let it all chill out, right? And so over and over again, what I want you to practice, instead of leaning in, right, and engaging in the problem, thinking that somehow you're going to solve it, I want you to actually practice leaning back and just let the problem float on by. And then when the problem, when the challenge, when the fear is floating by, are you going to feel more connected to yourself, to God, to your soul, or are you going to feel less connected? More. When we lean in, when we start trying to fix it and engage it and solve it and break it down, are we trusting God to solve the problem, or do we think that we're the only solution to every problem? We believe we're it. And so I want you to learn how to lean back and just get a chill going on, right? Lean back, put your feet up, and just watch your fears float by. Well, Richard, I have real fears. Like there's real challenges, there's real problems in my life. I can't just lean back and let them float by. Well, why? Would a spiritual master engage your fears the way you are? Well, they should. Well, they don't. They lean back, they let them float by, and somehow that day works out. And they realize that if they can do it one day, they can do it 2 days. And if they lean back and just let the fears float by, they can actually build a life, lean back, letting God be in charge, doing the 1 or 2 things that they need to do that day, and that's enough. Okay, the last point I want to make tonight. How many of you remember when we cleaned out our houses? Okay. I don't want you to miss the Kumari Method. And that's what I want to close with, all right? The Kumari Method says that you take everything in your life, and where do you put it? Goodwill loves the Kumari Method, man. They have had more donations, right? The Kumari Method says you stick everything in one area, bring it all together, and then you bring it up to your heart, and then what are you asking? If it sparks your joy. And if it sparks your joy, you keep it. If it doesn't spark your joy, then what do you say? Thank you, and you release it. Okay, what I want you to see is in every decision, I want you to Kumari it. I want you to take, in every decision, I want you to bring it to your heart and say, if I make this decision, does that spark my joy? If it doesn't spark your joy, I want you just to thank it and Kumari it, right? Let it go, right? And I want you to practice over and over, because what I want you to see is, can you imagine building a life that everything has to spark your joy? Everything in your home has to spark your joy. Everything you wear has to spark your joy. Every decision that you make sparks your joy. Any problem, any challenge, that you don't do anything until it sparks your joy. And if it doesn't spark your joy, what do you say to life? Thank you, and you release it. That over and over again, if we really practice Kumari, we get this thing down, then everything in our life has to spark our joy. Everything. That we don't give one thing room in our life if it doesn't spark our joy. Now, imagine when everything in your life is constantly sparking your joy. Right? You're just going to be like plugging into the wall socket all the time, man. You're going to be bouncing off the walls. You're going to be the happiest little freaked out person on the planet, right? Because everything is, so can you be in fear if everything in your life is sparking your joy? I don't think so. Like, I know it looks simple when we were just cleaning out our house, but what if we actually did it? What if we made a commitment that everything in our life, if it's going to stay, it's going to spark our joy? If it's not going to stay, we're going to say thank you, and we're going to release it. So this week, I know tonight I gave you a lot, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Right? A lot. You know, I usually try to give 3, and I think I was up to 17 points tonight or something. Right? So I know it's a lot, and I apologize for that. Those of you that are note takers, I know your hands are probably cramped at this point, right? But if you only hear me say one thing, this is it. I want you to decide what the most important thing is in your life. What's your spiritual project? What's the direction that you want to move your life in? And then I want you to realize that you're already there, but you don't realize it yet. And the realization that you're already there creates a healing in your soul where you no longer feel disconnected from God, from life, from the desires that you have more. And if you only use one thing that I taught you tonight, I want you to Kumari it. So that everything in your life, you bring it into your heart, you say, does this spark my joy? If it doesn't, you say thank you. And if it does, that's the choice you make. That you can make one choice after another that just sparks your joy. That you can actually create a life that is totally based on sparking your joy. And if you're not sparked, no thank you. That you actually are that important to God, that God would allow you to have everything in your life be a thing that sparks you to higher, to better, to greater, to more, and to let go of everything that's been bringing you down. Are you willing to try? Let's pray. I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God right here, right now. That what if we really decide that everything in our life, everything that's going to stay, every direction, every choice, every action really sparks our joy? That we could live a life that joy-filled. That everything is moving us in the direction of our dream, of just profound joy. So in all things, we dedicate our life to God, to the true spark of our joy, that we could live a life that good. And so it is. Amen.